Previously on Space Show.
Like a panther. Yes. Yes.
Well, this season of the Mandalorian is kicked off exactly how I expect it to be. It's a huge nothing burger. It seems that the overarching plot of the season is going to be Blando trying to make amends with his clan for the high crimes of taking off his helmet. Out of all the crimes that a mercenary warrior could commit, this has to be the stupidest, mainly because of how impractical it is. Now, can you imagine eating some bad space broccoli and suddenly you uke in your helmet and you're forced to keep it on because of some stupid arbitrary rule? What if you need to take a sip of water? How about a haircut? Do they have Mandalorians that specialize in cutting hair? Basic human hygiene sounds practically impossible at this point. And what if you meet a nice Mandalorian girl and you want to take her to Space Lookout Point? How do you make out? These are all questions that should never have been asked because of how retarded this is. They could have come up with a billion different reasons to kick Blando out of the club. And one that comes to mind is his possession of the Darksaber. Now, if you've been keeping track of all these stupid Disney Plus TV shows, like the Book of Blah Blah Fett, you know that in episode 5, Mando duels Vizsla over the possession of the saber. But rather than have Vizsla relent, because he's the proper heir to the Darksaber after all, Blando is forced to kill him, and therefore excommunicated from the clan. And trust me, that is a way better reason than having to take your helmet off because you sneezed in it. Now, keep in mind that the show is only 30 minutes long, and for the most part, nothing of consequence actually happens until the very end, and even then it's still very minor. The issue is that there is a shitload of filler scenes, and if this show was actually an hour long, it wouldn't be a big deal because you probably have maybe 30 to 40 minutes to tell your main story. The funny thing is, after I got done watching the episode, I told my producer it's exactly what we expected to be. And you know what his reply was? Let me guess. Flying around, Tiny Yoda doing Force things, minimal dialogue, the end. Well, he was mostly on point. Here's a quick summation of the episode. Blando flies to Planet 1 and has a conversation. Then there's an overly long spaceflight scene complete with space whales, which is a reference to the Rebels TV series that did not air on D+. And then Blando shows up to another planet and has another conversation. Insert some forced conflict and yet another fetch quest because the show doesn't already feel like a video game, more so than it already does. Which leads to a starship fight scene in an asteroid field, because we already haven't seen this like a dozen times in Star Wars. Admittedly, debris fields make these fight scenes more interesting. And finally, he arrives at Planet 3 to have yet another conversation. Seriously, folks, that is the gross simplification of what actually happens. Nothing of actual consequence happens in this episode. The issue I have with this episode is exactly the same problems I've had with the previous 2 seasons. It's bland, forgettable, they don't really do anything new, and you've pretty much forgotten it 5 minutes after watching it. I don't feel like I'm actually watching a TV show. Instead, I feel like I'm watching a YouTuber playing a video game and just doing fetch quests for 30 minutes. Sure, fetch quests are fun, but at some point you want to get to the main story, which typically is the last 2 episodes of the season. Everything else is typically filler and possibly set up for another TV series that is going to follow the exact same formula. The issue is that anything of actual substance happens in the last 5 minutes of the show. The sole purpose of Blando showing up at the first planet is to have the armor remind the audience why he was kicked out of Club Hardcore Mando and how he can go and redeem himself. Because none of this actually happened in Season 2. So if you didn't actually watch the Book of Blah Blah Fett, God willing, I wish I didn't, you would have no freaking clue what the hell is going on. And again, he has to make amends for something that any sane person would do. Take their helmet off. But no, this is the way of retardation. So Blando has to go and seek out the Beskar mines that are somewhere on Mandalore and bathe in its waters. Like it's the Ganges or something. Armed with that information, he heads off to the planet Dave Navarro so he can go resurrect his old pal IG-11, who suicide bombed himself in the first season. Mind you, he used the thermo detonator. There shouldn't be anything left of him, but whatever. Now, before they reach the planet, there is an excruciatingly long hyperspace travel scene, where Baby Yoda gets to watch the space whales. Now, in a lot of ways, I do think that the scene is actually well done. It really kind of highlights the loneliness of hyperspace travel when you're by yourself and it takes a really long time to get someplace. But this is a 35-minute show with credits. And mind you, this takes place 10 minutes into the episode, which means that we are more than a third of the way through it. It really could have been shortened to like 5 or 10 seconds tops. The scenes for the second planet last for roughly 14 minutes and it ends with yet another fetch quest. Blando wants to go and restore IG-11 so he can go and help him go and explore these lost mines on Mandalore. He meets up with Greef Karga, who is now in charge of the port of Dave Navarro. Greef and Blando get into a brief scuffle with some space pirates, and eventually they gather up the remains of IG-11 that were totally not vaporized by the thermal detonator. Mando attempts to go and repair IG-11, but it doesn't work. And so they take him some droid repair experts and they're like, yeah, we can't fix him either. We have to go and replace this totally not vaporized circuit board, so you have to go and get a new one for us. So with that out of the way, Blando heads to the third planet, which is Kalalamala. Kamehameha? Kalalamala?
This is Kalevala.
But before he's able to jump into hyperspace, he's attacked by space pirates yet again. Apparently, they didn't get their ass kicked hard enough the last time they ran into him. And this whole scene lasts for like another 4 minutes. Apparently, the dread space pirate Roberts is Oscar the Grouch. I guess he got sick of his trash can or something. Finally, we get to Kamalalala Land 29 minutes into the episode.
This is Kalevala.
Yay. And this is where something of importance kind of happens to the plot. But it still falls flat. Blando has arrived to visit Bo-Katan, who is living in isolation. This is because she failed to acquire the Darksaber in Season 2. The end result is that her followers have lost faith in her and have slowly abandoned her. Now, this could have actually worked, putting her at odds with Blando and introducing a nice bit of conflict and tension between the two characters. He wants the location of the mines, and she wants the Darksaber. Some shenanigans ensue, but as he's leaving, she throws out the tidbit that is the location of the mines. I guess the writers realized they need to move the plot forward at least an inch. And that's it. That's the end of the episode. The problem I have with this episode is the fact that Blando really doesn't have any reason to go and seek redemption with his clan or rectify the problem. In order for him to go and do this, there has to be a reason, or at the very least, motivation to do so. Now, in my opinion, there is a better way of handling this situation. What they could have done in the first episode is establish that Blando has gone into retirement and has settled on Navarro. Much like in the episode, Greef Karga goes and offers him the position as Marshal because Cara Dune was offered something better by the New Republic. He accepts the offer and is given a tract of land to live on. And just as he gets himself established and a sense of normalcy settles in, and because Blando is no longer a part of his clan, every wannabe Mandalorian is seeking him out to challenge him for the Darksaber. And he can't just go and hand it over and has to be won through combat. This continues until either Baby Yoda's life is threatened or he gets injured, and then he realizes that he has to go and rectify the situation with the Darksaber. And the only way to do that is to atone for his sins and become a Mandalorian yet again. The whole point of a story is for the protagonist to resolve some kind of conflict. And that conflict needs to have consequences if it isn't resolved. This is what adds stakes. What makes the story interesting is the trials and tribulations that the protagonist faces along his way to completing his goal. I get it. The sequel trilogy was nothing more than a bonfire of the corpse of Star Wars, and the Kenobi series was nothing more than a propane tank with the gas valve left open and thrown onto the bonfire for good measure. This show needs a reason to exist, which it doesn't, other than to provide content for Disney's streaming platform. In a lot of ways, the Mandalorian series has the exact same issues that the MCU is suffering from. There's actually no real plot, it's just a series of events that are strung together. And much like the MCU, I feel like the expiration date for Star Wars has also finally expired. And the only thing we can do at this point is just to throw it in the trash because it's gone bad. And I get the sense that no one's actually hyped about this show. I didn't see it trending on Twitter today. You know, if it was under the old guard, it would certainly be doing that. Anyway, that's all I got for tonight. If you enjoyed this review, I suggest you go and watch another one like this one I've been doing for Picard. Go and check it out. Time's running out. Click the thing.